Hey,
What's up? How's it going?
hey, Colin. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Yeah,
You been into vintage before?
yeah, I've been a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Normally, my memory is totally bound to just where people sat. If I can remember where they sat, I'll know. Because I remember, is it Bea?
What's that?
What's her name? B or Bea Baker?
No, I'm Mason, and B Baker is,
She's the one who.
yeah, we
Yeah,
work together. Yeah,
cool, cool.
yeah, and I have been in there. I came in with a group of friends one time, and we all sat down. We were all having wine, and then from the kitchen, you guys brought out like a lot of stuff, and my wife is Italian, so that really reminded me of like a true aperitivo like situation. So I was
Good, good,
really
good.
pleased with that. Yeah.
Well, that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, so we're back here with At a Distance, and I want to get to Food to the Screwed and all the great stuff you guys are doing with that, but we can just start off with so your background I read is in computer science and math, right? But then you read Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Nosrat, and tell me how that inspired you and how you shifted directions.
Yeah. So it's a kind of funny thing. I mean, I studied math and science. I also studied like writing and philosophy. I was like a real nerd basically before I got into cooking. But um, but yeah, I had kind of always liked cooking. It had always just been a thing that I did kind of instinctually. But I was a teacher beforehand, and yeah, I was always just sort of cooking for my friends, but always had this feeling that like certainly I couldn't be a professional cook, like certainly I couldn't be a chef. um, and yeah, basically I read this book and it was like, there were all these little things that I had noticed about cooking over just years of like trying it and thinking about it. And then I read this book and I was like, oh wow, all those things were like a part of this big framework. And I have actually been like developing the understanding I would need to like be an actual cook, like make a go at being a chef professionally. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. Oddly, like my parents actually did support it. I just told them I was like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. But yeah, I just left my job and I went to Orrin on Brookside. It was a very funny conversation, but I was like, I have no credentials at all. I'm just like a 27-year-old with no degree in like the culinary arts, no other experience. I'd never even been like a waiter or busboy. I'd never worked in a restaurant. Um, but then I just loved it. I really loved it, and I still do. But yeah, it's a kind of funny. It's weird that that was the thing because I had read lots and lots of cookbooks. But yeah, that book's incredible. I really can't
And
recommend.
how did you transition from Oren to working with Matt and building out a food menu for Vintage?
Yeah, so it's funny. Both of their names are Matt. So there's Matt Amberg, who's the chef and owner at Oren, and then
Right.
there's Matt Sanders, who's the owner of Vintage, and they are friends. So we would do events here and there where Matt Sanders at Vintage would want to do food for something, and so me and Matt Amberg from Oren, would go over there, work on some stuff. And I remember actually the first time I met Matt Sanders, I kind of had this sense like I should try to learn from this guy. I should try to see if this guy can kind of be my mentor. And so basically, what happened, even when I was still a cook, I would go in after shift. So I would usually get off from Orin around maybe like 10 o'clock or 10:30,
Mhm.
and then Vintage was open till midnight at least. And so I would just go there after shift, after I was done cooking, and basically just started asking questions about wine, just like, what is this? Where does this come from? Why does it taste this way? And for whatever reason, he would just like sit down with me pretty much every day for like 2 hours,
Yeah.
um, and just teach me about wine. And so when eventually I realized like, um, for a little while I was the general manager at Oren, and when I realized like, oh, that's not my path, I need to really be in the kitchen. Um, when I was going to make a move somewhere, I was like, I think I owe Matt Sanders, like a favor, and I know that I can do this for him. So yeah, I just asked him like, do you still want to get your kitchen started? And he said, yeah, and got it going.
Yeah, and how about crafting that menu? Because you have to create something that works with all of the varieties of wine on the menu, you know. And
Yeah.
it's not just like one of your menu items works for this, one works for this, you know, it has to be versatile. It's
Yeah.
like international bar food. So can you
Yeah.
talk about creating those dishes and
Yeah. So, I mean, in a way, it was a big enough sort of prompt that there were so many options. If anything, part of what made it difficult at first was that there was so much like freedom. I mean, the way we usually describe it is like we have wine from all over the world, so we want to have food from all over the world as well. That's why there's like food that is kind of Italian and aesthetic, that's French and aesthetic, that's Japanese, which is like my dad is from Japan. He immigrated, and then we're first generation immigrants. Um, but yeah, it was a kind of weird thing because I'd never done it before. You know, like I like to cook just for my friends, but in a professional capacity, there's all these other things that go into it. But I mean, thankfully, that is one strength that I brought from a background kind of in academia is I it's like my instinct to do research. You know, I had all these books and I'm reading all the time and testing and taking measurements by the gram instead of just kind of like freestyling things. Um, but yeah, it was a really cool. I mean, Matt Sanders, the vintage owner, is also very smart about wine pairing. So pretty much it would be like I would come in every morning, we would talk about it for a little bit, and then I would cook just through most of the day, and then I'd be bringing out food, and he'd be like, "Oh, this would be really great with that Riesling. This would be awesome with the Cab. This would be awesome." So yeah, there were definitely some days when I was having a pretty good amount of wine while researching and getting pretty full. But yeah, that took some months. I want to say that was like 2 months
yeah.
of research cooking, pretty much full time, and the menu's only like 8 items. Um, but yeah, I think actually, ironically, that background in kind of math and science helps with that diligent side. Like all of our recipes are to the gram. There's not even any like seasoned to taste. You know, it's like um, really dialed in. So yeah.
Yeah, and for the people stuck at home now, I was going to get to this later, but what are they trying to accomplish when they pair food with wine or wine with the dish?
Yeah, so it's weird because I feel like food and wine pairing has this like really almost mythical quality for a lot of people, as if it's like magic. But normally it's just like there's a lot of foods whose balance is skewed one way or the other. So, well, this is like an insight from salt, fat, acid, heat. Salt, fat, and acid are like the primary components. And there's a lot of dishes that instead of being perfectly balanced, they're slightly more to one side. So, for example, like if you eat a steak, it's not really balanced in terms of salt, fat, and acid. It has more salt and fat, but less acid. You know, like meat is only very slightly acidic. And so the idea is just that you drink wine that will like compensate for that. I mean, there's a couple other principles. Like, I mean, Matt could probably spell them out much better than me, but like for one thing, the intensity of the wine should be equal roughly to the intensity of the food. That's why you drink like rich wines with rich foods. If something is like fatty, you can use acid to help balance and cut that fat. But yeah, it's been cool. I mean, literally, it's like there's a few just well-known pairings that people know about, and those are like your
Yeah.
landmarks. And then the secret, also, the reason like our pairings are usually quite good is we just open bottles and taste it.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you taste it and you're like, wow, that's super good, like homemade sauerkraut, which takes like 25 days to make, by the way, homemade sauerkraut and buttery Chardonnay taste amazing. And I would never have predicted that, but we made sauerkraut. And I told Dalton, who's like one of the kind of managers there, I was like, can we just open a bunch of wine and see what goes best? And that was it. So yeah, it's a tricky thing because you sort of build facility with it over time. But yeah, it's basically
Yeah.
just like food that makes, or sorry, wine that makes the food taste better.
Okay. I've actually known Dalton since I was a kid. And in
Really?
these more recent years, our paths just kind of went opposite directions, but I've known him for a long time. So how is he doing? How's the crew doing up at Vintage through all this?
Yeah,
What's it
I
been
mean,
like up there?
yeah, well, I mean, truthfully, it's obviously tough for everyone. I think there's the two sides, which is um, like people who work in the service industry, people who work in food. I think by nature we're like pretty active people. We want to not just physically active, but we want to be productive. We want to see people. We want to help people. And so, I mean, in addition to like the economic realities of people who like are unemployed, um, that feeling of like not being able to produce good or not get things done, I think for me at least was really tough. Um, and I know, yeah, for a little bit, there was a week. So we closed, I think, a day before the mayor ordered like dine-in seating to close, and yeah, it was weird that for 1 week from when we closed until we sort of started thinking about like food for the screwed and things like that we'll talk about. It's just a really strange feeling. Like I've never had that really in my life. It's always if you're on summer vacation, it's like you're taking a break from something, but when you're coming back. And that was just a feeling of like, God, are we going to make it? Is this going to
Yeah.
happen? And that was before we knew the loans would come through. I mean, I would say for the most part, we're doing okay. Like, so Food for the Screwed, which we'll talk about in a while, has generated some money for us. Um, we've been doing like wine deliveries and things so that people, I think they're not in like a dire situation. Um, but yeah, definitely, I think one of the biggest things has just been getting used to this really rapid pace of change. Week
Yeah.
on week, it's like, now we're starting to reopen, and or not Vintage, but like Oklahoma is starting to reopen, and it just yeah, it's like every week it feels like the rules of the game are kind of different, and so we're always kind of saying, okay, like how do we need to change? What do we need to stop doing or start doing? But yeah, I mean, I think they're okay.
Good. And for everyone watching, Vintage on their website, and you can find out on social media, has a virtual tip jar. And they are doing wine to go, which supports the employees, selling some merch and things like that.
Yeah.
So how did Food for the Screwed come about? That's kind of your pet project, right? Or was it a co-op between you and Matt? I'm sure it was, but how did that get going? And how many meals have you processed now? Because I think about a month ago, you guys had like already hit around 1,000, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so Food for the Street is a really cool. Um, it was a strange thing. I think when we first closed down, and I like realized what was happening. Like I was one of these people who, so we had to like lay off the whole staff, technically, but we've been trying to like do some little projects and do some work. There was the feeling I think when we had this meeting that was like we're going to close, we don't really know when we're going to open, that things were like really dire. And the thing that worried me the most was like, I've only been in the restaurant industry for, I guess, like 2 years, but I knew how many of my coworkers, both from Oren and Vintage, and I worked at this food truck for a little while. Um, I knew how many just like don't live with a ton of savings. Like people don't make a ton of money in the hospitality industry overall. And so I knew how many people were already living kind of close to an emergency. I like knew the people who would really be screwed if it's like, cool, so it's just a month and you have no income. There's some people who like that's really, really hard for, including myself. So yeah, I just had this feeling like, you know, it's not like I have enough money to be able to just float my friends, but like we have to do something. We have to do something. We can't just like I knew that it wasn't responsible to just like we need to stay open, we need to make money. But at the same time I was like, man, I can't just let my friends go broke or I can't just let my friends go hungry. Like there's something really deep inside of me that just like has to feed people if I know they're hungry. And so, yeah, that was a tough spot. So I was like, man, I know that the dishwasher at Orn is going to be really screwed. I know this one other friend who I met through the industry is going to be screwed. So yeah, literally one day I was like, I know we can't like, I don't think we can be a, a to-go food restaurant. There's all these places that have these kitchen staffs and huge kitchens. Our kitchen, by the way, is so small. It's like half the size of a small studio apartment. There's like no room. But I was like, Matt, there's got to be some way, that we can help. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on here, but initially when I first talked about it, I was like, we should call it Food for the Fucked, because I was like, we're in such a bad spot. But we have to help people. We have to try. So yeah, I said that in a little meeting we were doing. And then the next day he was like, I think that's it. I think we'll have to call it Food for the Screwed, but like, we should do it. Like, we should just start trying to help. And basically our goal was always, if we can cover cost, then that's a win. Unless we're losing money, that's a kind of version of sustainable. And then, yeah, if we can make some money to support our staff, that's awesome. But yeah, at this point, I want to say it's like 3,000-ish. We've served about 3,000 meals. And it's literally, the program, it's essentially just a pay what you can meal thing, like a meal service, I guess. It used to be that we would cook overnight. There'd essentially be a relay that went from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. That was my friend Marco, who's my co-chef. And then I would go from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then this guy, Nick, would go from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And in this way, there was no overlap. It was a very lonely life, but it meant that the other cooks, we basically were not exposed to each other.
Mhm.
And then front of house, everyone who was delivering the food, they weren't exposed to us. So this was like our way of being socially responsible.
Yeah.
But now we've actually worked it out in a way where we just cook in the mornings before the other staff get there. And then we just open up the patio. We like prop the door open. We put a little table blocking the door. So it's like a little takeout window.
Mhm.
And yeah, from 4 to 7, just anyone can come. Tuesday through Saturday, 4 until 7. We're just out there and we have food just ready.
Mhm.
People can just come up. It's like probably about half of our friends. So about half the people are eating for free. And then we have supporters and people who hear about us. And some will pay like our sustainable price, which is how much it would cost for like us to get paid and to cover the ingredients. And then, we have people who will donate like $100 for just a meal every time they come, but it's because they know like a ton of people, like hundreds of people are eating every week for free. But yeah, that's basically a program. It's been great fun, and it's cool to be at the center of like a community that's trying to support itself.
Yeah, out of all these programs trying to keep businesses alive and help people out there, this is one of the coolest ones I've thought, because it's a pay what you can thing that is servicing literally hundreds of people a week. And it just seems like a really great program. Talk about some of the dishes you guys are making. Are you guys making something new every day? You said it's more communal style dining, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the dishes, like overall, it's weird to call it an aesthetic. The type of cooking that we're doing, it's like the type of cooking that people have always done when they just have very little money and they need to feed a lot of people. So for example, we did like a Thai green curry, just with rice, like ton of vegetables. There's always a vegetarian option, and then also an option with meat. But we did like Thai green curry. My friend Zach Annette, who is a true angel, taught me how to make gumbo. So we'd make gumbo. We have this enormous 80-quart pot, which I think it's maybe hard for people to visualize like what that is, but like I could crawl into that pot, and probably like one of my little cousins could also be in the pot with me as well. Like, it's a huge pot. And basically we were filling it just all the way to the top every day, or every night, like when we made the curry and the gumbo, for example. But yeah, we did like gumbo, curry. We did these picadillo tostadas, which is like a dish from one of my co-chefs' childhood. This week we're doing like tacos with this braised meat, brisket and pork. Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of people have this negative connotation for like poor people food, or like in Italian, it's like cucina povera, like the food of the poor people, I think used to be seen as like negative. But even things like, soul food, or like in Brazilian food, feijoada, it's like a peasant stew. I think oddly, those things are becoming kind of like sexy aesthetically. Like people don't look down on those foods anymore. So honestly, it's been amazing. It's the kind of food that I love to eat, that and also that I usually eat because I'm like don't have a ton of money. Um, but yeah, it's usually just sort of big portions. Now that we're on the patio, we serve sort of one meal's worth because people are free to just come over and over again. You know, we'll see some of our friends, like we're close with the St. Vitus people and the
Mhm.
Valkyrie staff. So we'll see them sometimes a couple times a week, which is awesome. Um, but yeah, it's like the food that people have always made when we suddenly don't have any money and we just got to make it work.
Yeah, great. And what else has been going on up there? Anything new and
Yeah, um, a bunch of other things. So yeah, I mean, like you said, we're delivering wine, which is super cool. Matt he'll make like a little 3-pack of sort of cool wines that are good to drink together, and those go out on Wednesdays. On Saturdays, we'll send out a lot of like bubbles and stuff for people to celebrate the weekend. Um, and then yeah, the other thing, I'm about to get this going. So we're sort of starting to plan for like what it will look like when we reopen. We certainly like it's May 11th or 10th or who knows what day it is. It's very close to May 10th. Um, but yeah, we're not going to be opening like this week. I don't think we're going to be opening next week. But whatever, in a month or 2 months, whenever it happens that we reopen, we'll be doing it. One of the things that was on my mind is like, okay, when we're not delivering meals to people directly, how are we still going to help our friends who don't have as many hours and are struggling to make ends meet? So yeah, it's kind of cool. I got this grant to do this cooking class through Tulsa Young Professionals, or Thai Pros. So it's this, my friend who's a web designer basically is helping me build this website called Cooking Concepts, which will be basically like a cooking class for the type of cooking you need to get through something like this. So how to cook for super cheap, how to cook when you can't go shopping very often. So I'm sort of filming half those videos at Vintage while also realizing I have no idea how to edit video. So it's taking a little while. But yeah, so that's one of the other projects. I'll normally in the mornings when no one's there, I'll go and record some videos. But yeah, between wine and then food for the screwed, we're starting to develop like new menus and food for when we come back. And then this cooking class called Cooking Concepts. I think that's like most of our projects. We're doing cocktails and wine, but I'm less involved with that, so I don't know it intimately. But
yeah, great. And for when things finally do reopen and people can come back together, can you talk about the Champagne Social Club and how people could get involved with that?
yeah, for sure. So Champagne Social Club, it's on, oh man, my head is like crazy. I was going to say Sunday. It's on Saturday. But yeah, it's a kind of fun, like excuse to get together and drink bubbles. It's basically like you come in, you do a couple little fun, stupid things. You saber a bottle of wine, which is where you like knock the top off with this kind of dull knife. Um, yeah, you saber a bottle. I think you take a picture. I forget. I'm always working, obviously, when we're doing Champion Social Club. But yeah, once you do that, you can come in on Saturdays from like 3 until 6, and then and you have like a discounted list of bubbles. So a lot of people come in, they'll get a bottle of like champagne or good prosecco or whatever. You'll get like a free order of fries, and you can just like come and hang out. We don't really know. I will say, I don't really know whether when we get back, there's so much uncertainty about like what's going to
Right.
happen. My real hope is that along with like a bunch of our specials and everything, that they can still come back. But if it doesn't come back, it'll be back eventually. And in the meantime, yeah, we have a ton of cool stuff planned. I think some of it is like kind of vaguely, not secret. It's a little bit secret. Some of the things we're planning, the stuff we're planning for the sort of first phase of when we're reopening
Mhm.
is rather radically different from how we have been before, and also very punk in aesthetic is how I would describe it. Kind of crazy and fun, and an excuse for us to grow. But it'll be awesome whenever I know that it's just meant to be common knowledge. I'll put it out there. But
Great. And my final question would be, what do you miss most about Tulsa, or what's the first thing you're going to do when this is over, whether it's a specific bar or shop or restaurant, something that you can't do now that you'll be
yeah,
right back to?
man, it's weird. It's a mixture of things. There's a few there's a few places that I really, there's nothing philosophical about it. I just miss them. I was so much in the habit of going there and liked it. Like Sir Coffee is my favorite coffee shop. That was like my default place for when I wanted to just go and relax and maybe do some work. So I will definitely be back there like as soon as that's possible. Um, Other than that, especially once I became a cook, I wasn't going out that often, but I talked to someone about this. The thing that I miss the most really is it's just this feeling of being being alive makes it sound really morbid. It's not like people aren't alive, but being in the presence of like human energy, good, happy human energy of like people living their lives. It's not even that I have to, it's not like, oh, I'm dying to talk to them. I mean, sometimes I am, but yeah, just being in a community or in a space that feels like people are living and enjoying themselves. I mean, this actually, truthfully, was one of the reasons we decided that we wanted to do food on the patio, give out food on the patio, is like, even though there's like two of us back there or three of us back there, we can play music and be sitting in the sun and, you know, see our friends, granted from a distance, but there is this feeling when, you know, people are coming that it feels almost like we're like living again, that we're just happy in a community. And really, I mean, when we see our friends, like, it's not like a joke that we're happy, like we really are super happy to see them. So that's definitely like, that is the thing, both even when I'm working, just getting to be around people who are enjoying food and wine. And then also just like, yeah, whether it's a dinner party or going to a restaurant or coffee shop, just like getting to feel that sense of community tangibly instead of just, you know, virtually. But,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great. And I have to let you know that you guys are missed because this is my fourth or fifth interview. I ask this question every time.
Yeah.
And Jake Miller, the head brewer at Heirloom,
Heirloom, yeah.
he said that he misses vintage the most and he just wants to sit there after a brew, drink a glass of wine, and eat your Japanese chicken skewers. And
Uh,
then
yeah.
the rapper Dial Tone, I talked to him a few days ago. He said that he misses vintage.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's
So,
awesome.
so
Yeah,
you
I
guys
miss
are definitely missed. And
yeah,
yeah.
I miss those guys. Yeah, Jake's
Well,
my friend.
thanks for all the work you guys are doing. Keep it up. And we look forward to when you can reopen.
Yeah, absolutely. You should
Yeah.
stop by for some food.
Yeah, I will. Stay
Cool.
safe.
All
See
right,
ya.
good to see ya. Bye bye.